What's up, guys? Welcome to the BTS of the film, because it is a film of my friend. It is cool. It looks great. You guys like my new Gen Z hair? No longer YouTube dad, TikTok dad. All right, enough of this nonsense. Recently in the studio at Creative Club, we have been kind of doing an incubator for YouTube ideas, and I was able to have the privilege to take the idea of my friend Gene and bring it to life in this film that I'm going to share the BTS about today. Say hi to Gene.
Hi.
Welcome to the BTS of Gene's film, How to Take the Perfect Photo. So he let me just run with being the director of photography and director and editor of this film. So I'm gonna go through the concept of the story, the tools that we used, scene by scene, how we shot it. And that's about it today. I just wanna keep it as brief as I can so it's not a 40-minute long video. We started off with chapter 1 being the motivation to go out and shoot film at an epic location, trying to get this banger photo, this incredible looking image. And we're all guilty of this. I mean, it's fun. It's cool to go to cool places and shoot awesome stuff, but really kind of challenging the concept of like, okay, but where's the heart or the meaning and intentionality of going out and photographing something like that? And then it goes into chapter 2 with developing the film that he shot from that outing out to North Avenue Beach, printing the best image of that set, only to feel disappointed with the outcome. And then finally, chapter 3, going home defeated and ultimately realizing that the perfect photo is much more wholesome and beautiful and not as shallow as, you know, the images we're all prone to want to take all the time. The camera and lens choice for the film, I shot it all on the C200, Canon C200 in RAW, and I used my Canon 16-35 f2.8 version 2, as well as my Sigma 24 1.4 art lens and the Canon 50mm f1.2L. So a range of using the zoom outside, using the wide prime in low light scenarios where I needed a wide, and then the 50mm prime for tighter stuff in low light scenarios. We also used a GoPro Hero 8 for one shot. For stabilization, I used the Easy Rig as we walked around North Avenue Beach in that first chapter, and then a Manfrotto tripod for the rest of it, with the camera being on sticks. Sometimes I went handheld, and then we also used sandbags on the tripod for one or two scenes. For audio, we used this Cascade tube microphone for the voiceover into a Zoom F6, which does 32-bit float audio. And then I rocked my Rode NT-G4 Plus on the C200 for scratch audio in the first and last scene. And then we use sound design from online. I use a site called Zapsplat to get some sound design and some pickup sound design shots here and there from the camera. The lighting was very minimal. We actually didn't use any of the constant lights we normally use, like the Aperture 300X or the Godox 200W. We ended up using a light that Gina and I have both owned for a long time called a Color Spike. I don't even know if it's in production anymore, but it's like you could do animated lights, you could do color lights, you could do all sorts of stuff with it. It's just a long stick, basically a quasar tube, just kind of packed into something smaller and much more controllable. We also use the Aperture MC LED pocket light, that little rectangle light. Available LED light on the charging station, as well as the light bed for scanning and Gene's phone, illuminating his face. We used light stands for the Color Spike and a C-stand to hang a grid, as well as atmospheric aerosol in the last scene. So the meat and potatoes of this entire BTS, I just want to go through our intentions of shooting this and how we got to the point where it turned into what it was, as well as a scene-by-scene breakdown of some of my favorite shots throughout the film. Before we shot anything, we did pre-production. Gene thought of all of his ideas in a Notion document. He put reference images in from Shot Deck, which is what I ended up doing in my last short film previously posted on my channel, something that we're going to continually be doing throughout the year as we collaborate on these short films together. We really wanted to convey the message of going from a very cool and cold scene to a warm and nostalgic and inviting scene towards the end. So if you scrub through the entire film from start to finish, you'll see it go from very cold to very warm and slowly shifting throughout the entire film. We did a 4:3 format for the film to really recall nostalgia. Also just kind of reference to foreign films that you might see in 4:3. And the 4:3 format was also a really big step of intentionality for me because I was including a whole new language that I normally don't use in my films. So we got in the editing process to talking about how formats in filmmaking can communicate an entirely different message. So I normally shoot in 16:9, 17:9, or really vibey 2:3:9:1 aspect ratio. So going to 4:3 was a challenge, but also something that I realized could communicate so much more. Typically in 2:3:9:1, I move my images up and down to reformat them in post, but I found myself moving them side to side because that's what you do in 4:3 if you shot the image in 16:9 or 17:9. We did the voiceover in Korean originally, and all of it in Korean to honor Gene's heritage and connecting the story to his family. They all speak Korean in the household, but they speak what Gene calls Konglish, Korean and English. And so when Lois, his wife, interpreted most of this for him to be a solid voiceover that made sense in Korean, he delivered all of that in Korean, and she listened back and she was like, this just is way too distracting. You need to speak the way you normally do. So we ultimately re-recorded the voiceover and made the decision that he needed to do partly Korean and partly English because that's how he normally talks. And then we realized the decision to do English and Korean subtitles made a lot of sense with the combination of both languages. So whether you're an English speaker, a reader, or a Korean speaker or reader, you could interpret this film no matter what. We did a mostly stationary camera with subtle shake from time to time, but all of the movement with shake tended to be in the beginning scene where it was really cold, and then we slowly moved to locked off shots that just felt way more stable and secure, kind of going with that same sentiment of going from cold to warm. So let's break down a few of the scenes that are some of my favorites, the way they look. Okay, so right out of the gate, we wanted to use a yellow text because we felt that would be great contrast in especially the blue scenes in the beginning, but also just kind of going for that foreign film vibe. So this first shot, we actually had the color spike off to the right through a grid on a C-stand. It has barn doors, so we pushed the barn door so we got that V-shaped light on the wall, and then we brought the color temperature all the way to blue and shifted it to exactly what we wanted and ran it through the grid to almost emulate like light passing through a tree. I don't think we achieved like the look of a window per se, but it is still a very striking image. And then obviously his phone is lighting up his face on the front side. I'm gonna skip over some of the other ones that are just pretty obvious and how we shot them. Next up, we had all of these handheld shots in the car as he was going. So I was in the passenger seat handheld with the C200 pointed at him. And then since I wanted a different angle, I actually had Steven in the back, who was shooting BTS for all this. Thank you, Steven, for all the BTS footage. Something that was really fun that I didn't intend to do in post but ended up happening was I did these 3 shots of Gene walking out to North Avenue Beach with him in the dead center, with the vast landscape around him, whether it was the tunnel of trees or the concrete tunnel or the cityscape in the backdrop. And not all of them were shot at the same distance or composition. So what I ended up doing on each of these shots was zoom them in for scale and reposition them so that I could do a 50% overlay on the original image, transitioning to the next one and trying to line up his legs and hands where they were before it cuts to the next part. So I was literally finding the frame where he was in the same lockstep as he was previously in the prior scene, and then scaling it at the 50% opacity. I was actually doing that as a trick to get them to cut, and then I ended up leaving in the few frames of a 50% opacity to create this illusion of this ghost image transitioning into the next one. First one was a little sloppy, but the next one was really crazy. It's really cool to try creative things in post and just see what happens, and then it ends up being something that you never would have thought of before, and I'm very excited about that visual technique in this film. Outside in the first scene, the rest of it was just all on easy rig with available light, so there really wasn't much to break down other than getting the composition right and exposure correct.
BTS or the BTS?
Of the BTS.
Of the BTS. Hey, I'm not going down for this.
For the developing scene, we had this on sticks to walk in, very simple shot, Gene walking in manual focus, so it stayed locked on the stuff on the table. And then we cranked the tripod up onto 3 stools, turned it to 90 degrees so we could get an overhead shot, and then put sandbags on the back of the tripod so the camera wouldn't fall over. And we knew it would be in 4:3, so we could even keep the legs in the shot if we wanted to. And Gene just had to kind of sneak into that little cozy spot under the tripod while he poured the water into the tank. This shot is probably the one everyone's wanting to know how we did. We probably did 4 or 5 iterations of this with a GoPro Hero 8. We ended up using a ton of gaff tape, surrounded the GoPro with gaff tape in the tube, in the tank, and on the camera to get it perfectly center within the tube. We had to change settings a bunch of times because if you left the ISO on auto, since there's so much black in the actual tank, it was overexposing Gene's skin that was lit by the LED panel on the workbench. So we manually set the ISO, I think, to 200 and reshot it like 4 or 5 times to get it exactly right because we knew how impactful this shot could be. And at the end, he just closed the tank with the lid. One of my absolute favorite shots of the whole thing, and Gene deserves all the credit for this one. It was his idea, and I'm so happy we did it. So we have another locked off couple shots, and then moving to scanning, I changed the color spike to the opposite side of that same wall that we shot at the beginning, closed the barn doors even more to get that streak of light across, and then warmed it up to an orange color while he scanned his film negatives, which are also warm, over the light bed. We're also using this aperture. Is it called SC? MC. We are putting it right, since there's not enough light coming from the light bed and there's a bunch of orange over the negative. We're just putting that literally right behind the light bed, and in the shot, it literally looks like it's coming from the light bed. So that's how we're getting light in every direction. And then another one of my favorite shots in the whole film is this looking up perspective at Gene's face as he assesses this negative. This took a lot of iterations again, and you can see some of the imperfections in the reflection. You can actually see a tripod leg, I'm noticing now. We took one of Steven's picture frames, took the picture out, and then shot through the picture frame. To get this, we had the 90-degree tripod out again with sandbags, C200 pointed straight up into the light bed. We had the color spike up top pointing down at the negative so that you could see the negative. And then also we had the pocket MC light, the aperture light on Gene's face to illuminate his face so we could see it on the underside through the glass. So you're getting this perspective as if you were at the table looking at his face, viewing the negative. Just love challenging ourselves in shots like this to get different perspectives that are very, very interesting. Very simple shot in the studio of our natural light coming through the windows in our shooting space. And then the final shots going home were just all, again, very intentional on tripod, locked off compositionally, exactly what I wanted. And again, with the 4:3, I was able to adjust the frame left and right to get it to be exactly what I wanted each time. Now, this frame of Gene at the table with his family, we shot about 5 times. I got focus with autofocus on my Sigma 24 at first, locked it off to manual so that the autofocus wouldn't catch on the girls coloring the table. We did 5 or 4 different shots of this because the girls kept going into the frame and cutting off Gene's face, and I wanted to just create this image where you could see all of them, but they're perfectly framing Gene in the center, and then Gene is obviously meticulously placed within that window frame centered up. We then cut to a tight, which I was reminded of by Gene because his preparation was shot deck, and we didn't have my 85 in my Pelican. We only had my 135, and I was really happy that we chose to use that because this tight is so epic with that window behind him still framing him perfectly on this tight of him looking over towards the Mamiya at the windowsill. And finally, the last 2 shots, we have him putting his Mamiya 7 on the tripod with this little slice of light. This is not the same position we had it in for the final shot, but one to just illuminate the camera. And finally, the last shot with the shutter release cable, him holding it, and a very similar scene to what you saw in the beginning, coming full circle with the shutter release, but him doing something that felt way more intentional than kind of the empty, shallow stuff he was doing in the beginning. We hazed out the room with atmospheric aerosol. That's why you see the beautiful glow of light coming through the window and onto the scene. And onboard NTG mic, getting the click of the shutter to end the film with Gene's final line in Korean saying, "I'll find it here." This may be the longest I've ever taken to create something. And that says a lot because it only took 2.5 or 3 weeks. And I really want to challenge myself this year in creating things that take more time, to slow down, to create things that are much more intentional. And you might be noticing I didn't release this film on my channel. Really, what I want to communicate there is that I am coming alongside the people in my studio. These guys, Gene, Steven, Braxton, we have all been going at this together for a month now. I'm really excited about working with all of them in collaboration on short films like this throughout the rest of the year and indefinitely. So please make sure to go subscribe to their channels. Obviously, go check out this film on Gene's channel. Go leave him a like and a comment and subscribe to his channel if you are interested in checking out what he's doing or if you related to this or found it inspiring. I'm also really hoping to put this edit and the breakdown of this edit inside the classroom, my course for wedding photography and wedding filmmaking, to show what you could do outside of the realm of just doing weddings and how you could extend your creativity to other things. I want to be dropping the classroom again and open up enrollment this June. And if you missed out on it this past fall, you'll have a chance to do it again and know that there will be more stuff added to it throughout time. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. And I hope you're doing wonderful, and I love y'all, and I'll see you in the next time and see you next time. Bye.